What's up, page turners? Welcome to Writers with Purpose. I'm your host, Melvese from Written Words Publishing. At Written Words Publishing, we envision a world where every storyteller, regardless of their background, has the opportunity to share their voice, shape narratives, and impact the world through the written word. So, if you value powerful storytelling, which I know you do, page turners, because y'all love to read and y'all love to write, do me a favor, like this video, follow this channel, subscribe to this channel, whatever platform you're watching on or listening on, and share this podcast, okay? Because I'm pretty sure that our guest is going to tell us something that somebody you know needs to hear. So tonight's featured book is not a simple story about survival. It's an unflinching look at what comes after. Laurel's diary explores the lasting impact of trauma on trust, intimacy, identity, and human connection with rare honesty and emotional precision. This is the kind of book that challenges readers, stays with them, and sparks important conversations. Okay, so that's another reason why y'all need to share this episode, because then you'll have somebody else to talk to about what we're about to discuss today with our guest Gina DiMarco. Let's welcome Gina DiMarco to Writers with Purpose, everybody.
Hi,
Hey, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I genuinely appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you. All right, producer, I was just a little tad bit too late. Welcome to Writers with Purpose, Gina. Tell us something about yourself.
So, I am a nonprofit consultant. That is what I do in the daytime. So, I work with some really amazing clients over here on the East Coast that do a wide range of really great work. So, whether it's homeless shelters, women's shelters, technology group that goes in and does extreme, as we call it, extreme home makeover nerd edition. I love that each and every day I get to work with some incredible people doing really incredible things. So,
That's awesome. A nonprofit consultant. That is so great. Well, just on a side note, before we jump into your book, do you assist people with grant writing and things of that nature?
I do quite
Oh,
frequently, yes.
okay, okay. Great. Yeah, because I know another grant writer. She's on LinkedIn and she's on uh, Clubhouse twice a week. She has books and she has an app. What is it? Dreambuilders.com, I believe, is Dr. Barbara Wright. She
Love
is
it.
like, yeah, she knows it all. So I don't know if you might want to check it out if you need any additional information or some tools or resources out there. So
Look at
tell
you
us.
making the connections. I love it.
I mean, I mean, you never know. I'll send you a link. Tell us your purpose for writing Laurel's diary.
So the funny thing is, I did not intentionally write this book. It kind of happened over the course of almost 10 years. So I was sexually assaulted almost 10 years ago. And the way that I process trauma is writing it out. And so I took to my diary and I wrote it out. And my then boyfriend, now husband, Chris, was a million miles away in Kansas when this all went down. And so I processed a lot of it with him through email and text message. And so this book is a compilation of diary entries, emails, text messages, and a few narrative pieces to weave that entire story together. So I never set out to write Laurel's diary. I ended up compiling it I started compiling it about a year ago. And that's after me putting together workshops and being part of survivor circles and working with these vulnerable populations and realizing that this story can help other people. And so that's what I did. I sat down and I compiled it. And then I went to work cutting away all of the pieces that didn't need to be there. until I was left with what you have, Laurel's diary.
That's great. So what ultimately made you decide to go ahead and just open up and share your story with the whole entire world? Because that's a pretty bold move. Like, was that part of your healing process, or did you feel like you were already healed when you decided it was okay to share that story with the whole world?
That's a really great question. Um, I would love to say I'm 100% healed. I feel like we all would, right? We're perfect, we're great. But the reality is, this is something that I'm going to carry for the rest of my life, just as the same as for other types of trauma that we all carry to one degree or another. The reason that I finally published and made the decision to publish is because in my nonprofit work, I work with these vulnerable populations. And some of the women that I was sharing my private story with would then say, hey, that makes a lot of sense. That was really helpful. Can I share it with? And then the next survivor, and then the next survivor. And then I started to put together workshops for these women, taking bits and pieces of what I learned in my own story and sharing it within those circles, seeing fruit from that and realizing maybe there's something to this. Maybe I should work on figuring out what those important pieces are, so that I can then start this conversation for other people who don't have that language yet. And so that's why I finally made the decision to sit down and share it. I don't think that I would have shared it if I hadn't reached a point of healing where I was comfortable enough to share it, where I was comfortable enough to give voice to it. I have reached that point, but it was honestly a lot of the ways through writing, through compiling this book, where I finally felt as though it was time to share with people closest to me. Because, to be fair, most people weren't aware that this was even something that happened to me until I went live with publishing. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a bit of healing involved with this as well, which is why I ended up renaming it Laurel's Diary. A lot of folks ask me, why isn't it Gina's Diary? Because it is Gina's diary. These are actual lifted directly from my diary, but I didn't want my name associated with it originally. And so I chose the name Laurel because the apostrophe S version is laurels. And laurels what were given to the victors of the Olympic races back in ancient times. And this felt like a marathon to me. This entire experience felt like a marathon. And I felt like this book, getting it published, that was my laurels. So Laurel's Diary, that's where that came from.
That's a great way to connect it. Was it difficult deciding how much of yourself you actually wanted to place on the pages? Like when you were going through it, there's some things that you were thinking, no, I'm not going to include this, and then later on you decided, yeah, this has to be here.
That's a good question. So I am someone I'm a very open person typically, especially if I feel like it's going to help someone. So no matter how silly or frustrated or upset I would be in sharing those things, if I genuinely think that there's something to be gained from it, I will share it regardless. So I did not worry about sharing those more vulnerable pieces in there, because that's where survivors really glean connection. That's where folks resonate. And so if I were to have withheld those vulnerable pieces, I don't think the book would have landed the way that it has. So
Yeah, probably would have felt like from the outside looking in, they probably would have been able to tell something is missing here, especially if they've already been through it. Like, wait a minute, she couldn't have ended up here without going through something like this, first.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What do you hope that survivors take away from your book? I know you work with survivors, so you've been passing it around. Yeah, what do you hope that survivors take away from your book?
So the biggest thing is understanding that there is language and logic around what they're going through. Even for myself, who I'm a very logical person, and I did not understand what was happening to me. A lot of the psychological fallout, of the emotional fallout, was really difficult for me to process until I had language around it, until I understood what was happening and how I could begin processing those things. So I would love for this to give survivors language around what's happening to them. Now, obviously, everyone processes trauma differently and trauma manifests differently for everyone. But if anyone resonates and is able to then identify their struggles in what they saw me struggle with, then I would be very happy. I really would.
Hmm. That's yeah, that would be really great if they could just get exactly what you want them to get out of the book. You mentioned that, your husband, who was your boyfriend at the time, he seems like he's really been there for you. What kind of advice do you have for those people who are the supporters of survivors? What advice do you have for them? What can they do to help the survivors?
Don't be afraid to get dirty. And what
Mhm.
do I mean by that? I mean, Chris, I love him in so many ways. He really is just chef's kiss, like across the board. But the one of the things that he went out of his way to do that was so helpful for me is he gave me the space, he gave me the time to, for lack of a better term, be chaotic. And
Mhm.
he embraced me in that chaos because he understood that I was like a pinball in a pinball machine just getting smacked around. And I had nothing solid to hold on to. And he gave me something solid to hold on to. He made sure that I understood, even when I felt impossible to love, he reminded me over and over again how much I was loved, how much that he was there to support me, and how he would not be giving up on, me, our relationship, and the future plans that we had together. That was incredibly important to my healing process.
That's great. I'm glad that you had someone there that could provide that emotional support and give you that room that you needed so you could go through what you had to go through. It would be awesome if everybody had someone like that that they could lean on. So that is really awesome. Well, what's one misconception that people have about trauma and healing that you really wanted this book to challenge? Because I mean, if you have not gone through it, looking at it from the outside, I'm pretty sure that if you don't really know what somebody's been through or the type of trauma they've dealt with and how it really affected them, you might see them act a certain way or talk a certain way, and then you think about them a certain way that's totally wrong, a total misconception.
You're entirely right. I think that, so one of the biggest ones, because of course, for folks who don't know the process for publishing a book, typically before the real book goes live, you'll send out what's called an ARC. It's an advanced reader copy. And I sent my book out to a whole bunch of advanced readers because you want to start getting feedback and reviews and things like that. And the biggest surprise I think that I got, I was not expecting this, but it was a misconception that I had to keep articulating clarity over and over and over again. A lot of folks were surprised by the amount of sex that I discussed very openly, very candidly in the book.
Mhm.
And because obviously with sexual assault, sex is a big piece of that. And you have to really break down how you view sex and how you express sex in an intimate relationship. And so I go into that very detailed, very candidly. And I think it was very surprising to many ARCs or ARC readers because the misconception is survivors of assault either become celibate nuns who want nothing to do with sex because it's too traumatic. And then you've got all the way on the other end of the spectrum where survivors basically become promiscuous because they're trying so hard to divorce the act from the emotion.
Mm.
And so there is no middle ground. It's you are either completely celibate or completely promiscuous, and anything in between just makes people feel uncomfortable. And so that was a misconception I didn't mean to tackle, but now I'm very intentionally having those discussions when I have discussions about the book, because survivors are allowed to enjoy sexual intimacy as well. And it's still something that, as humans, many survivors want to experience and need to experience for healing. And so it's on a spectrum. It's not either none or promiscuous. So that's probably a really big one that I was not expecting to rear as much as it has.
Mm. You are right, because I mean, for sexual assault is not something that seems like people talk about openly. And then if you do happen to know that someone is a victim, I'll believe, yeah, that is a misconception that we would have, that they either one way or the other. Where's the happy medium there? That was, yeah. Well, I'm glad that your ARC readers were able to bring that to light. Yeah, who knew? I mean, now that you mention it, I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, she's right. Yeah. So did you include any trigger warnings for your book?
Absolutely. So my hope with this book is that it ends up in the hands of college students during psychology courses, women's studies, sociology courses, because I want people to have a real time understanding of what trauma looks like. So we often see, the Lifetime movies where survivors are curled up in the bathtub, fully clothed with the shower running, or they lock themselves in their bedroom for weeks and months on end. And very rarely do you see the interplay between survivor and her partner, or survivor and her friend base, survivor and the world in general. And this, because I intentionally preserve how I spoke, how I wrote, the things I said, the things I was feeling in real time. I did not change anything. I legitimately lifted diary entries, lifted emails, lifted text messages, and posted them to the book without any editing for content. I want folks to see the reality of trauma and what it does and how it feels. So that's what this book, at least that's what I really hope this book does.
Mhm, mhm. I'm glad that you tackled that mission, and I hope that there are others out there who may have been in a situation where they're dealing with some sexual trauma, that they will hear or see this episode of Writers with Purpose and go out and purchase Laurel's diary. I love your cover here. Tell us why you decided to put the tape across her mouth on the cover. I'm just curious.
So, one of the things that I do tackle in this book is how the system, and by the system, I mean prosecutor, police, advocacy, it unfortunately doesn't always help survivors. In fact, very often it works against survivors. And that's
Mhm.
why we have report rates as low as they are. That's why we have prosecution rates, successful prosecution rates, as incredibly low as they are. And I had originally thought about putting evidence tape there because I wanted
Mhm.
it almost to seem like this was something that the system was doing. The system was trying to silence, society was trying to silence survivors. And so that's why I put the tape there, or that's why I wanted the tape there. I had a lovely cover designer. Her name is Lisa, and she did all of this because I have exactly zero, probably like negative art talent. So she's the one who did all of this, but she took the concept that we discussed and was kind enough to put this all together for me.
Well, she did a great job. I like it. I like it. So tell your page turners where they can purchase Laurel's diary.
So it is available wherever books are sold. So it's on Barnes and Noble, it's on Amazon. It's on Ingram Spark. It's on BookBub. It's anywhere you buy books.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you decided to go far and wide. I really appreciate authors that go far and wide, and opposed to subjecting themselves to one platform and then complaining about what they can and cannot do. You would not have to complain about that platform if you went far and wide. Just FYI.
True story. True story.
Awesome. All right. All right, Gina. Well, I want to thank you for coming and being a guest on Writers with Purpose. And I'm hoping and praying that, our audience got something out of this discussion today. I truly do believe that, your book is going to help others. Have you reached out to like other counselors or advocates, trauma centers or things like that, to offer your book as a tool that they can use to help or help counsel their survivors?
So, not this book. I did put together a self-guided therapy book, believe it or not. So, it's a journal because I had a really tough time discussing any of this with a therapist. It just wasn't in my wheelhouse. I didn't feel comfortable doing it. And so I put together, for people who are like me, who are reticent to try therapy, I put together a book that they could do basically self-guided, and then take that to someone to begin those tough discussions. So that book, that trauma journal, is available also on Amazon, but it's being put into the sexual assault kits that survivors get at hospitals and women's shelters.
That is awesome. That is super awesome. I'm
I'm
glad to hear
really
that.
proud of. That's been, I think I did that about 5 years ago. That had started, I put it together, not just for myself, but for fellow survivors in the women's shelter that I was volunteering at. And it, again, really good fruit there. And so I figured, hey, if it's working here, it's probably going to work elsewhere. So I did that
Wow.
one under a pen name, though, because I wasn't ready to go public with my personal story yet. So
Okay. Well, I mean, with your name or pen name, either or is fine, just as long as it's out there and it's a tool and people are able to use it and benefit from it. It doesn't matter whose name is on it.
amen. I love it. Yep.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for being a guest on Writers with Purpose today. And I want to thank all you page turners for watching us. If you know somebody who could get something out of this conversation, who may be able to find Laurel's diary to be useful, please be sure to share, share, share. Okay. And we will see you all on the next episode of Writers with Purpose. And in the meantime, y'all keep writing, y'all keep reading, and keep turning those pages. All right. Bye bye, everybody.